and welcome to the podcast, Living Uncertain. This podcast is dedicated to obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, and the primary treatment, exposure response prevention, ERP. OCD comes in many forms, such as contamination, perfectionism, checking, harm, superstitious, religious or moral, sexual orientation, and/or relationship. ERP is the gold standard to treating OCD, and it focuses on deliberately confronting fears, the exposure, while refraining from compulsive rituals, the response prevention. With repeated exposures and without engaging in compulsions, we learn to tolerate anxiety and break the cycle of intrusive thoughts. We are a married couple that have faced both the challenges of OCD and the incredible healing that ERP can provide to your marriage, family, and your home. As a person who lives with OCD, I am much more than this diagnosis. We all can be. Hey, I'm Stacey, and along with my husband, Mark, we want to thank you for living uncertain with us. Welcome to our podcast, where we discuss all things OCD and ERP related, especially as it relates to navigating OCD with your significant other. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about the beginning of our story, and specifically on this date 1 year ago. February 19th, 2025, signified one of the most challenging days of our life. And it was in that day and in that darkest moment that one door unexpectedly closed and another opened. And it led me and then us to a healthier, happier version of ourselves. One where we could break free from the cage, really, that OCD had put me in for so long. And this is going to allow us to hope that we can help others by sharing our darkest moments and our triumphs so that others know that they can better manage their own OCD as well. It's important to start with February 19th, 2025. But it's also important to say that, yes, I'm 47 years old and I have OCD, and I have had OCD for more decades of my life than not. I have just right OCD. I have some contamination OCD. I have mental compulsions. I have ruminations. And I also have relationship OCD, which affects me with primarily platonic relationships and a people-pleasing compulsion. That's me. And here's our story.
Well, I'm Mark. I am Stacey's husband, and I think one of her biggest fans outside of our two wonderful kids that we have. But February 19th of 2025 was the day that I got thrusted into supporting her with her OCD journey and working through ERP. The day started off normal, like any other day. Part of our ritual was to drive to work every day.
Together.
And I would drop her off at work, and then I would cruise over to work, which was only about 5 minutes away from where the business that we owned, which is a very important part of February 19th, because that was the day that Stacey walked away from the business, and a lot of it was because of mental health, self-harm. The OCD had taken over more of her life than she could keep contained.
And might we say that when Mark says that I walked away from the business, he's being kind? Because in reality, my mental health had plummeted so deeply that he literally had to pull me out of that clinic.
Yeah.
Pull me out of the business. And take matters into his own hands, if you will. And he had been the silent partner, and he was suddenly thrust into being more of the managing partner of the business, especially in those first couple of weeks when I had to step away. But early in 2025, the business was struggling. Financially, we were struggling. Mark and I were starting to struggle financially at home because of decisions we had made because we were business owners and that's what you do. And so financial struggles were getting us from all ends. And I was in I would say, change needed to happen. Changes needed to happen in the business. And I brought in some business consultants to help me navigate that, to see what that would do. I was up against a staff that was not kindly taking to those changes. To be honest, I bought a business that I was their colleague in first, and then I became the boss. So those were already unique challenges that I was up against. And when the business started failing financially and I couldn't stop it, it certainly ramped up my OCD. When I couldn't or didn't feel like I was making the women who worked for me at the time happy, I would ruminate and have mental compulsions until I would do actual compulsions that would be considered extreme people pleasing.
And for people out there that are in a relationship, you don't realize sometimes that you're feeding those mental compulsions. There were many, many days where I would get phone calls at work on my cell phone, and she'd be asking me questions like, do you think I said the right thing? Do you think this text message was okay? I think they're mad at me. What do you think?
I needed his reassurance, because reassurance is very key to those of us who have OCD, in the very serious way that it can affect people. And we need those opportunities to check in with people, to check in with the person we trust the most, which in my case is my husband, Mark. And I would do that. We've been married over 20 years. I've been doing that our whole marriage. And when my mental compulsions would get too much, I would call and make sure that he could calm me down by assuring me and then reassuring me again. And I would have to ask him the same thing multiple times, multiple ways, in order to feel and hear the same thing. This became our norm. And until I was 47, I did not realize that that was OCD.
And February 19th was the day that I was thrown into your mental health journey.
Mm-hmm.
You had been receiving counseling for over a year prior to that date.
I had. And I'd just been recently, as of early 2025, diagnosed officially with OCD and was starting to dabble, if you will, into the world of ERP, trying to find what was going to work for me to start to diminish those compulsions. Yeah.
What was your OCD? We really didn't have an idea. Your therapist didn't have an idea. So there was a lot of questionnaires that you were going through and trying to figure out what, where you two needed to start that journey. And let's back up a couple weeks prior to that, because there were some self-harm moments that were starting to occur.
Yes. So I could feel the pressure mounting at the beginning of that year, beginning of 2025. And so, I was starting to find myself relying a lot on ruminations and mental compulsions and what I called cringeworthy check-ins. So I would go find and seek out the women who worked for me at the time and literally check in with them, talk to them, bring them into my office and talk to them, ask for their advice, ask for their reassurance, which I now know that's what I was doing, even though at the time I didn't. I was constantly in a loop of having to do that. And it really had huge impact on my ability to run the business. Although there were other factors in the business we were in that were challenging. And so this just kind of compounded it.
Some of the self-harm that you didn't one of the things our relationship is I think you were very honest with me and not hiding some of those self-harm aspects that you were doing.
Yeah.
And I think part of that was your OCD that was wanting to
Was
share everything.
oversharing and over apologizing, by the way. That one also comes up quite frequently for me. But yeah, I decided to start taking scissors to myself and injure myself. And then when I told you about that, you took my scissors.
Yep.
And then the only thing I had left in my office, because I was literally self-harming in my office while I was at work, were my keys. So I started taking my keys specifically to my hand and harming myself, cutting myself, if you will. And then you took my keys.
And the reason in your mind why you were doing that.
Mm-hmm. Well, as we said, we needed to make changes in the business, and the women that worked for us weren't too keen on those. And because it was the first time I wasn't able to just compulsively people please and get reassurance from them, or it was the first time since owning the business that I couldn't do any of that. The anxiety that I was feeling got so high that I needed to take it away. And that was the only way that I could think of to do it.
You were at a 10.
Every day.
If there was an 11 and a 12, you probably
every single day
would have been there.
Crying every single day. I was literally felt like I was losing my mind at that point.
And Sundays would come around and you would dread going to work on Monday. And
because no matter what I tried, it never felt like they were happy enough with me. And I had to leave conversations with them feeling just right, or I would have to have the conversation all over again. Or I would have to find another way to have a different conversation where I could leave it just right to make sure that they were happy.
And running a business and having all of those OCD components do not work very well together. And unfortunately, yes, I was a silent partner, but there were aspects of the business that I could see that were not maybe going down the right way, that I would try to give suggestions. And sometimes those suggestions you did not agree with. And some of them were possibly personnel changes.
I didn't agree with them because they would take away my ability to compulse. And I wasn't ready to let that go.
So that morning, February 19th, dropped you off to work. And you did what you normally did, which was to do a cringe-worthy check-in.
I sure did do that.
With employees?
I did it with one employee who had become someone that I felt like at the time I could trust, and also someone who I could, quote unquote, count on to give me those reassurances. I know now that that wasn't the right way, and that was just kind of perpetuating my OCD. But on that day, when I was at my lowest point mentally, and I couldn't quite get myself out of it, she unknowingly gave me my first dose of ERP. And I didn't know it at the time, and I certainly wasn't ready for it at the time. And man, it really sent me reeling. And when I didn't get that reassurance from her for the first time, and I was feeling so low, the next thing I remember, I'm wandering around the parking lot. I walk outside, wandering around the parking lot. I'm on the phone with Mark, and I am literally telling him goodbye and that I love him and I love our children, but there's nothing more I can do in the world anymore. And perhaps the only way I can make them happy, and when I say them, I mean the women who worked for me, is to end my life. And so I started talking about walking into traffic or other ways that I could end my life. And once I got to the point of talking about that,
I knew we were in
You
trouble.
said enough's enough, and we got to figure that out.
And I left work that day pretty quickly, dropped everything I was doing. I have a great team that works with me, and I told them I will be back later. I didn't even need to explain anything that was going on, and I just walked out the door. And unfortunately, I had to go back home to get something for you. Prior to, as these days kind of led up to it, working with your therapist, I knew that there were signs of trouble with the cutting, and I had personally reached out to her and said, hey, if I get to that point to where I feel that she is a danger to herself, what should I do? Where should I go? Is the question of what I asked her. Where should I bring her? Because I do work with young adults, and I do know where parents do bring their young adults when they get to that point. But dealing with somebody that's older, family member, and I wanted to make sure that I had the resources necessary. She had given me several names, and a couple of them I knew. And I knew I didn't necessarily want to bring you there because they were not places that you would self-admit. It was you'd have to go in.
You would have had to commit me.
It was commitment.
Not voluntary.
Yeah, there was definitely not voluntary. But one of the places we were given was a voluntary, and you and I had conversations that if it ever got to that point, that you would.
I made the promise to you that I'd go, and so we did. We went right that day, right that moment.
Picked you up. You jumped in the truck. We drove to the hospital. We got into the lobby, and in the lobby, I don't know if you remember, but we had to lock up all of our electronic devices.
Oh, I remember.
Had to take off our watches. Our phones went in there. My wallet went in there. I mean, everything went into the locker.
Yep.
And they gave us paperwork, and we went into the intake room.
Yes.
And during our time during the intake room, you were filling out the paperwork because my handwriting is awesome, and you were at least at that moment.
In that intake room, I have to say, was probably as dark as it was for me to be wandering around the parking lot, telling my husband goodbye. I think from my memory that day, my darkest point, or my most shameful point maybe, came in that intake room when I was ranting like I can't even describe it anymore. It was like I was having an out-of-body experience. I was ranting. I was feeling like I was losing my mind, quite literally. And I wasn't feeling like I was being coherent. I didn't feel like I was making any sense. There is so much shame that I have over that moment in time that it's taken me some time to even get past that. I've never heard myself like that before, and I have never heard myself like that since. And we're here sharing our story, our darkest moment, because we want to help, because we know there's much more on the other side of the darkness. But in that moment, I had so much shame over the dark. I never thought I would be able to talk about it like I am right now. But I had to get there in order to get to the healthier place. And I would be nowhere near where I am today had I not gotten the intensive, and I mean intensive ERP that I experienced after I left the business in 2025. The intention was for me to go back. And unfortunately, I didn't. I never went back.
It wasn't the right choice.
It wouldn't have been the right choice. No.
And we know that now.
Yep.
almost
Yes.
A year later.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that part of the journey too, in future episodes, and you chose not to go in. which for me was heartbreaking
I know.
because I know I needed you to get the support
Yep.
that you needed.
And seeing the way you reacted that day too will live in my head for much longer than I'd like it to. But I couldn't, I was starting to have almost paranoia about being there, about being cut off, about being alone. And so plan B was hatched.
Well, while you thought you were going to be in there, you thought you would die,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Mm-hmm.
what we now know one of your highest
Mm-hmm. Fears and
fears, and one
Yep.
of the first places you started
ERP.
with ERP,
Yep.
which was around death. And
Oh boy. Yes.
and that
But there was a real paranoia at that moment that I would get attacked and I would die. Something would happen and I would die. I was truly, I can't even explain it. And I have never experienced that since. And I've had OCD forever. And that was the lowest, darkest moment I had ever gotten myself to. I don't wish that on anyone. Not even people that I don't like too much. And I would never, ever, and pray that I never, ever experience something like that again. And I'm fairly confident that I won't, because I have so much more knowledge and all of the tools now that I would ever need that I didn't have then.
we walked out of that building.
Mm-hmm.
You got in the truck,
Mm-hmm.
and I needed to come up with a game plan
Mm-hmm.
for you,
Oh, yeah.
for the company,
Mm-hmm.
for our kids,
Yep.
all of it in a matter of probably 2 hours, I felt like.
Mm-hmm.
The first phone call was to your therapist,
Mm-hmm.
and with talking with her,
Mm-hmm.
we made a plan to bring you home,
Mm-hmm.
have you supervised,
Mm-hmm.
because we did not want you to harm
Mhm.
yourself to the
Yeah.
point that you passed away.
No, I had to be
Monitored.
supervised 24/7 for several days
And
while I came down off of the
that initial
yeah, I don't even.
desire
Oh, yeah. Yep.
to walk into traffic. And that road is very, very busy and scary.
Yeah.
And I definitely worried about that. I knew where a lot of the stressors, the OCD side was coming from, and that was coming from your employees.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can say this, and both Mark and I can say this with the utmost confidence now, that if it had not been for the business, I would have never been diagnosed with OCD, and I would have never gotten treatment, even though I knew something was off with me, if you will, or quote unquote, for many, many years prior to that. I was really good at hiding it. I was really good at isolating myself, avoiding people and things. Everything you could think of, I was doing it. What I couldn't do after I bought the business was avoid or hide or pretend or do any of those other things that I had been doing for all those years before. And so the business ownership brought my OCD to light in a way I never expected it to.
And both you and I have said that that's a blessing and a curse all at the same time.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's given the fact that the business is unfortunately closed now, and that affected a lot of people. I would be remiss if I didn't say there was a part of me that didn't resent or regret buying the business in the first place. Wish we would have never done it. At the same time, I am happier and healthier in my life than I have ever been in the 47 years I've been on this planet. And had it not been for the experience of the business and getting to that low point, probably wouldn't have that now. So
And if there's
there's
anybody,
gratitude and a blessing in there.
and if there's anybody out there listening right now and they're feeling like they're at their lowest of lows with their partner that might be suffering with OCD, and you're feeling like maybe a punching bag, or you're drained because of the OCD and it's draining your relationship, potential marriage if you're married. There can be a better side.
There absolutely is a better side. And this podcast is really, we wanted to do this because of our passion now for mental health advocacy, for OCD education, to provide that information and to provide that support for people who have OCD, and also for those who have people who, well, those who love someone who have OCD, let's say it that way, whether it's a significant other or a parent or a best friend, whoever it is.
So with that day on the 19th, brought you home.
Mm-hmm.
I took all of your electronic devices
Mm-hmm.
to where nobody was going to be able to get a hold of you.
Yep.
I talked to the business consultant.
Mm-hmm.
They agreed to support me as I transitioned into that more primary leadership role.
Yeah. Because you couldn't leave your other position either. So you were
Nope.
straddling both.
Nope. So, talking to all the employees that I was going to be more centered forward. What was not even funny, but nobody really asked much about you other than I had told them that all communication was going to be going through me. Please don't reach out to her on her phone because I have her phone. And I do not think that they necessarily liked that I was stepping in as that managerial role.
No.
Because, my current job, I'm in a managerial role, and I've been doing that for better part of 20 years.
Not to pull focus either from the OCD piece, that really was the detriment. But when I hear things like no one really asked how I was or what had happened or anything of that nature, I'd be remiss if I said I wasn't surprised, because I think in a lot of ways the environment also brought on a lot of the OCD that I had been really good at keeping hidden. And I think that in a lot of ways, unknowingly, I think the people that worked for me at the time,
I think some knew.
I think they liked it because
they always got what they wanted.
Was always a good place to work, let me tell you.
They got raises,
but we didn't.
They got vacations.
But the other side of it was that the business was failing financially, and it got to a point where then I couldn't stop it, and that's where we landed. Certainly, this isn't really about that, and so we want to keep our focus centered on the healing process of what ERP can do for people with OCD. So that's all I'll say about that. But
well, and the reason why I say that is that was the moment, that was the day that I got thrusted into your
world,
your world, your treatment plan.
Yep.
I became a part of the treatment plan. I wasn't just somebody sitting at home on the couch.
No.
Or somebody driving you to therapy because you did not like to drive for the longest time. But that was the day that I had no choice but to become a very active participant in your treatment for OCD.
And let me tell you this, as we sit here today, because we don't typically like to dwell too much on February 19th, 2025 either, but it is a very pivotal, important part of our story. But as we sit here, February 19th, 2026. When he says that he was thrust into the world of my treatment plan and into OCD, he really was. And Marc has become just as much a passionate mental health advocate as I have become. And he has become so knowledgeable on OCD and what ERP can do. And he knows how to implement it to almost perfection. And had he not been willing to be the person that I could trust more than anyone else in my world, and if he were not willing to be the person to commit to this incredibly challenging treatment, I also could not be where I am today. He literally saved my life. He's the best man I know. And I'm so grateful. And I'm so blessed that we have the chance to now share our story with everyone. And truly, yeah, I'm the one who has OCD, but this is our story, Marc and I together, because unless you have someone who's willing to commit with you, once you are ready to commit, because it is not easy, and I'm here to tell you it isn't, but it is life-changing, then making progress is much, much harder. So thank you, babe, for saving my life.
You're welcome. I'm glad I did.
Me too.
Every appointment you would go to, I was sitting there right by your side.
Mm-hmm. And where we are today, you wouldn't even recognize.
No.
Me especially, because I'm the one that's kind of had to go through all the ERP. But you wouldn't recognize me. I don't recognize myself. I'm not the same person that walked out of that clinic, walked out of that business that day. I don't ever plan to be that person again. I am at least version 8.0 of that 1.0 version that I left behind that day.
For a time there, you thought you were at a 2.0.
I was almost there. I was so close to a 2.0. I really had been working in therapy very carefully,
Not living in their heads.
Yep. But no. It wasn't
now,
until the intensive treatment. And the intensive treatment we did 6 to 8 hours a week for several months over the course of 2025. And not only did we do that in the therapy sessions themselves, but then we were doing therapy out of the sessions where I had to practice ERP at home when it came to our children, when it came to death, when it came to driving, when it came to all these different things that I had fears and obsessions and compulsions regarding. People pleasing. Wait till we talk about that one. That was a fun one. Every time I would tackle another one, I would have to practice all of that day after day after day.
And I will tell you,
and he had to hold me accountable.
Somebody with OCD, practicing ERP with them. I think me sitting through the sessions with her was very beneficial because, as many of you probably know, they are good at sneaking in a cringeworthy check-in with their significant other. That check-in that helps ease that anxiety, helps bring it down. And my catchphrase, and I love it, I'm not sure.
It went from, you're fine, it's fine, everything's fine, it's okay, don't worry about it, don't worry, to,
I'm not sure.
And then I had to sit in that discomfort, and I had to sit in that anxiety and let it get to the highest point it could reach so that I could bring it back down without engaging in a compulsion, because that is key to ERP and to help and recovery. Is you have to stop engaging in the compulsions, and ERP is the way that you get there. And that's what helps you get to, you don't have to engage in compulsions when your anxiety hits. Because every time, we'll use Marc as an example, every time over those years that I would check in with him, that I would gauge his reassurance, that I would need him to tell me I was okay. Oh man, that felt good to me at the moment because my anxiety came right down. but then it just started the process and the loop all over again. So by reassuring, you're actually doing the complete opposite of helping someone who truly has the OCD. And that's one of the biggest things we learned right off the bat.
Yep. And we'll talk more about that in future episodes on your journey of OCD, along with the early years of Stacee and with her family prior to me walking into the picture.
And what OCD looked like in my adolescence. I would say my early teens was when I first started noticing.
The 90s.
Oh, the 90s. It was a good decade, y'all. Good decade.
And then we'll hit, early on with us getting together, how it actually impacted maybe your relationship with my family a little bit, not knowing what it is. Now we do.
Yep.
And maybe if you would have had treatment prior to this, what it could have been.
Yes.
But
definitely.
there's always the looking back. We can't look back. We always have to look forward.
Definitely. And each episode, we want to share a different compulsion or fear that I had to attack using ERP, and what I did and what Mark had to do in order for me to get on the other side of that, so that we can give examples of real life things that happen to us, in case these are things that are happening out there to other people, other individuals with OCD, other significant others who have a partner who has OCD. And this can be a way to support and help and let others know that we're here and we did it and it is possible.
And we, future episodes, we'd like to invite people out to join us to share their stories.
Absolutely.
Because it's more than just you and I.
No, it isn't just you and I. And
we're large community.
I was going to say, we're here to be a part of this community now and be a part of what mental health advocacy can be.
So once again, we want you to join in, share this episode with anybody that you might feel might benefit from it.
And we thank you for living uncertain with us every day.
And listen to us next week. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode and for living uncertain with us. We are not therapists, and this podcast is intended to provide information and support. It should not replace traditional means of seeking help from a licensed mental health professional. If you like this episode or would like to hear more, please like, subscribe, or share with someone you think may benefit.